Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. The moon is 23 degrees Libra, opposing Chiron, conjoining Spica. And it's a good time to call on Spica because we're gonna need that thing where Spica is conjoining the Senate of Israel. And it's also to do with fair trade and the justice system. Recording, thank you. And the world has been asking for this episode. Jupiter, ruler of the hours, also ruler of the ascendant, at 13 degrees Pisces, and in midheaven at 19 degrees Sagittarius. Jupiter is retrograde, 16 degrees Cancer. Venus, that rules the moon, is 26 degrees Aquarius, and she's ruled by Saturn, that's at 29 degrees Pisces. Now, I want to do a study live with you, because a lot of people have been talking about the Epstein, and there were even discussions about the Epstein being unalived when he was about to sing. With Marc Dutroux, they simply brought Saint Michel. um, but we can't say anything without saying Rolodex, and that one involves the Supreme Court, which was the allegations against Jorris Demmink. Now, since the people that are named, there is a hierarchy in exposure. And unlike, let's say, the names that are coming now with Epstein list, okay, where they were thinking to fire Pam Bondi, which I don't know. I don't know if Pam Bondi is kind of like the Michelle Nihul or the antidote, because back with that truth, they fired everyone and brought Michelle Nihul. So um, what I was running into is something that's quite interesting. So Joris Demmink is Supreme Court judge that was consecutively accused of um, kind of being an Epstein lister, okay, of harming children or raping children or or being with child prostitutes and so on and so forth. Um, and that was something that was happening along the years. What I was wondering is, other than his, like, it's unusual for a Supreme Court judge to be so exposed to scandals as Joris Demmink was. Okay? Yeah, if we understand that the structure is a structure, why this name and not other names? So I was trying to see what was Joris Demmink doing that the structure of extortion cults basically wanted to replace. Okay? um, and we're going to study this article together. I'm not going to do Joris Demmink natal chart now. I did it, I think, in the. Oh, did I broadcast that? I'm not sure. Um, ICJ should be removed from Netherlands is outside view by Taras Kuzio. This is from March 7, 2013. So it's around the aftermath of the ingress of Neptune to Pisces. With the Saturn, Neptune, and Neptune leaving Pisces, I was expecting some new stuff to do with the Rolodex, and I was wondering why would it take so long if they so many times wanted to litigate or persecute. And by the way, Joris Demmink was also part of. He wasn't a part of the parliament, but he was a part of the Day party, which was a ruling party for I think 15 years. Okay, that's the party that Mark Rutte, now Secretary General of NATO, was the prime minister of, and the party he grew up in even before the separation from the PVV, or the PVV that was coming um, from the VVD. they were working together, and then the PFF was separating. Um, so apparently, this article links Jorris Demmink to the ICJ, which is the court in The Hague and crimes against humanity. This is the court that gives the verdicts regarding crimes against humanity. And so I was pondering whether the attempt to remove Jorris Demmink or dismantle Jorris Demmink from those circles, and again, it doesn't mean whether he did or didn't do, okay? Extortion cults logic, people are set up to be extorted and exposed as it glitches. So, okay, as far as I'm concerned, Jorris Demmink could be the biggest devil on earth, but something that supposed devil was doing was countering an agenda that those that set him up to be exposed didn't manage to extort him to do, which could explain why he was exposed. Now, of course, Jorris Demmink is Supreme Court judge between, I think, 2000, the 2001 or 2002 to 2012. Would have a leading position, although the allegations began since the 90s. So now we understand that structure of extortion cult means that those offenses are committed as a part of a requirement for a position. So if Jorris Demmink did it, it means that any other person in equal position did it. And so why? So they would want to expose in order to get rid of. And there was litigation regarding. There was an investigation regarding the Ministry of Justice and the jurisdiction. Okay, the jurisdiction authorities, and then it brought Jorris Demmink, and then it was halted. But the question is, other than the fact that Jorris Demmink was in a position to halt an investigation, which exposes a structural flaw in, okay, in the system, because why would a person in the position of Demmink be in a position to halt an investigation against whoever that person is, be it Demmink or not? And was there a calling to change the structure of the jurisdiction? Because to replace Demmink with another person is quite possible. In fact, in 2012, he finished his credential as Supreme Court judge, and but to change the structure, okay, so that any Supreme Court judge wouldn't be able to halt investigation against him or her. That would be the more interesting factor. So, Washington, March 7, 2013. In a groundbreaking resolution, the U.S. House of Representatives recently introduced a bill to move International Court of Justice from The Hague, where it was founded. And I know that we're thinking about Singapore, at least in recent years. The resolution was submitted by U.S. Representative Christopher H. Smith, who is co-chairman with the U.S. Helsinki Commission. So, sponsored resolution referred to different aspects of human rights, that of sex trafficking, which the U.S., of course, has nothing to do with, which at any given time enslaves 4.5 million people. Okay? Um, October 4th last year, that was 2012, the ingress of Neptune to Pisces, USHC had briefing entitled Listening to Victims of Child Sex Trafficking that submitted evidence on Jorris Demmink, Secretary General of Minister of Security and Justice in the Netherlands from 2002 to 2012. In a previous decade, he was Dutch Director General for International Affairs and Immigration. Everybody in a democracy, including Demmink, should have the right to be presumed innocent before proven guilty. So this is a due process. At the same time, Dutch authorities shouldn't, as Smith told the briefing, act like an ostrich with its head in the sand. Ostrich is occult symbolism, so they are basically prompting an occult symbolism that is within the very secret societies. Okay, so they are basically reframing the occult that they practice. By the way, First Nations do have political deities and political spirits that they work with, but in our modern society, this is considered secret. It's not something that's openly discussed, and there's no transparency around those rituals. Um, and this is a reference that people that aren't familiar with the jargon, and by the way, I don't know exactly what does the ostrich means. Some refer to something to do with cloning, or the ostrich egg, but this is definitely an occult related. ICJ is the principal institution to promote the rule of law between nations, and it cannot be located, U.S. Congress said, in a country where the rule of law isn't in place. I guess we're moving the ICJ to space then. Um, not Mars, because it already has slavery perspective. Refusing to investigate serious charges is important in and of itself, but obstruction goes much deeper. Mika Kat, that has been a prominent figure, although there were also sort of allegations towards Mika Kat himself, and he was looking into ritual abuse as well. So he's threatened with imprisonment for a range of alleged crimes, one of which is writing danger pedophile on Demmink's home. Kat is well known for his website, klokkenloideronline.net, Whistleblower Online, where he exposes scandals in the Netherlands. And by the way, he himself, like I said, was also there was this said that he was also part of for the cloning project, or that he was a double agent or something like that. The Dutch Association of Journalists wrote last month to the Turkish embassy in the Netherlands complaining about threats, intimidation, and ill treatment against Turkish journalist Burhan Kamzali, who was first to report on the allegations against Demmink. So, was the pinpointing of a Dutch Supreme Court judge and the dismantling of the court system in Netherlands? I mean, you cannot dismantle something already dismantled, allegedly. but were they pinpointed that for the ICJ? And ICJ is where the jurisdictions for crimes against humanity, war crimes, is it a genocide type of questions are being discussed. Now, before anything like looting the minerals in some Middle Eastern or bordering Russia country with plenty of rare earth minerals, before those things happen, they are prepared years in advance. Those are the years, and the country that has the ICJ in it probably, what was Mr. Demmink not really going with the flow of? I know that that he was so early on exposed. Okay, if you think about it, none of these things, it's not like, oh, one person does that in their own private. No, 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 no. I'm forced to legally say if that is true. If that is true, okay, that means that the children would have handlers. That means that this would have to be on tape, and that means that, the Rolodex is a Rolodex, is not Jorris Demmink, it's Rolodex. It's not Demmink, it's Rolodex. It's list of. Why was that name out and the others weren't? And it could, it is a system of systems. I talked about Saint Nihul. I think any person with any affiliation to these levels of jurisdiction has an altar in their room with the picture of Saint Demmink. So the very serious allegations go beyond sex trafficking into the world of national security. Good morning. All sex trafficking is to commit war crimes. Providing an additional explanation as to why the allegations aren't investigated. March 1998, Kurdish businessman and political activist, drug trafficker, okay? Hussein Beybizim was detained in the Netherlands at the insistence of Turkish authorities. Now, here is the thing. 4 years later, Beybizim was sentenced to 20 years in prison in charge of conspiracy to murder, kidnapping, and drug smuggling, which was increased to a life sentence a year later. Yes, that's... Somebody had to provide the children. They wouldn't trust the provider of the drugs to get everybody to rape children on camera without that person also being trusted. Latrines taped on camera of children. A life sentence without the possibility of parole, and then all the free Beybizim movement started saying, "Oh, he was a drug trafficker, but he didn't." Da, 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 da. Drugs are used in that context, and they wouldn't trust a drug trafficker otherwise. Okay, some people may say the name Tahi. I don't know. Life sentence without a possibility of parole is unprecedented in the Netherlands, even for serial killers. You say, oh my God, I say, no, 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 not Norwegian. But the reasons for severe sentence have been since become clear, and my potatoes are almost ready. Turkish and Dutch. Like, what are you cooking there? um, have revealed many facets of this case and how evidence is used to charge babies in, including falsified telephone call tapes and pressuring of witnesses. Um, Family Guy. Anyway, those who remember how I got to this case, please suspend suspend those insights. And Turkish intelligence report cited by BBC known by its abbreviation EK rapport. It wasn't that Jorris. And prepared by intelligence officer Hussein Kelebi revealed how Demmink sexual tourism in Turkey under different alliances was used to blackmail the Dutch authorities to neutralize a senior Kurdish separatist leader. Um, okay, but I don't think the Kurds would have such power to to expose Demmink. Um, in so the Patrius affair, in which CIA director David Patrius was forced to resign because of an. By the way, MK Ultra and MK often are CIA. I mean, of course, paperclip, but they are CIA projects. Some say, "Oh, it's originally Dutch." I don't know, Falken, but that would mean that if the allegations are true, sorry, I'm forced to say that legally. um, there was an alleged recording of a conversation with Demmink where he said that yeah, he slept with children, but but he's of the people that make the rules. Um, I think that was on Mika Katz, one of the Mika Katz interviews. However, one could claim that Joris Demmink is a creation of MK Ultra, which is a CIA project. And like I said, if they created these people since birth, do ritual abuse, and force the children to ritually abuse, it means that since childhood there would not be. It means that all the NDAs were invalid. Definitely, one cannot continue, let's say, I don't know, raping children and so on and so forth. And if we want to dismantle child trafficking and extortion codes, we need to take a look at those creation processes of the figures that are later set to be extorted, and when it doesn't work, set to be exposed and disposed of. Okay, like I said, that let's say Joris Demmink is not a saint, or maybe according to the saints he is. Okay, again, allegedly, but let's do a thought experiment and say Joris Demmink is guilty of all that he has been accused of and more. With that thought experiment, that he is not a saint doesn't mean that the circumstances around his exposure and the process of the creation of him being that devil is not important to actually dismantling the phenomena of child trafficking that we claim we want to abolish by exposing, let's say, Joris Demmink. Because if the creation process is torture since birth, let's say he's getting an Eichmann punishment, okay? Let's say he is um, basically being executed. Did we abolish extortion calls? Did we abolish child trafficking? And if not, what would actually tend to abolish child trafficking? Because it's not like since being a dividing cell and being a Supreme Court judge, which is the time of that article, which is 2012, 2013, there was some trajectory where the conditions to have a choice were presented to the telos that we named Jorris Demmink, that could have been comprised of different consciousnesses, handlers, drugs, classified technologies hacking nervous systems, and happen to many unregistered births or cloning projects, as we saw discussed with the Epstein case. Okay? Just saying, oh, this person, exterminate this person, fantastic, exterminated this person. Did we exterminate child trafficking? Jurisdiction is about either being preventative, but underneath being punitive is being preventative, is so that it wouldn't happen again. And here we beg the question, how? Classified technologies that can turn what seems pseudoscience to scientific. There I'm going from Larry Loudon 1990s to Larry Loudon jurisdiction. But classified technologies that could turn basically what is considered pseudoscience, like even mind control by proxy, nervous system hacking, drug administration by proxy. And again, the more the person is susceptible to trauma, and if they were born into, I don't know, let's say a cloning, or even as a child, ritual abuse that they could have even been dissociated from. Okay? And even as conscious offender, what is that consciousness? Is it the authentic consciousness of a healed from trauma person that has access to choice and is free of addiction? For example, to being, let's say, pedophile or sex offender. Again, with the thought experiment, the Jorris Demmink, for that record, is guilty in all that he is being accused of. Now, the classified technologies, keeping them classified, that they could turn someone from pseudoscience to somebody who can observe. Keeping those classified technologies classified is basically an act of messing with due process. It's messing with the evidence. It's making evidence go missing. And that, of course, the byproduct is a scientific revolution. I talked about the scientific implications in previous episodes. Yes, this is my thesis in praxis. Because what was used to create the Demmink, let's say Demmink is guilty in all that is associated to him and more. What was used to create a Demmink can only be looked at when those classified technologies are declassified, including the rituals of the dark occult, like desensitization that I talked about previously. Turkish and Dutch media have revealed the many facets of this case and how evidence is used to charge BBC, including falsified telephone calls. Okay. Again, what was the role of BBC? Okay, to provide drugs for something. He needed to be trusted, and that would mean that it would be his role to make sure things are on tape. Like, I don't know. Of course, allegedly. Patriots who held a senior position comparable to Demmink ran a dangerous risk of being blackmailed by foreign powers. Now, Kurdish separating from Turkey. First of all, is territory, which entails rare earth minerals, oil, and gas. Who were the companies that were interested in running the infrastructure, rare earth minerals mining of the Kurdish? Which wouldn't, if there would be Kurdish separate, it would be Kurdish land, and then it would have rare earth minerals. So if there were companies that were wishing to take over those, and that would dismantle Turkey's control over those rare earth minerals. So there were probably those that were wishing to have a dividend from Kurdistan. And also Kurdistan is at the juncture of when we want to have a railway system from Europe through the Middle East to China. Same reason we had World War I. Okay, the Germans were about to build such infrastructure, and there was an argument, a way to dismantle that was also colonialism. So was Demmink supposed to be with the people that keep it Turkey so that they can build that railway system? And was the attempt to expose Demmink an attempt to dismantle that railway system? Now, the original railway system from World War I was supposed to deliver oil and gas. I don't know what energies does Demmink support, or what does he have. There's attempt to reassemble Standard Oil, and one of the way to dissolve a conglomerate is to basically interfere with that global route of oil. Now, of course, this oil coming from the Gulf, or Europe having access to energy that's not Russian, would create sovereignty for Europe. So in that case, if Demmink was supporting that, I can understand where would he be coming from in that regard, which would create sovereignty for entire Europe, which NATO is dealing with right now. Mark Rutte, Secretary General, a couple of weeks ago said, or a couple of days ago even, said that Europe is dreaming if you think it can protect itself without the United States. With that railway system, perhaps it could. Now, regardless of sovereignty to Kurdistan, okay, regardless of the social political issue, the gas and oil and rare earth minerals issue could dismantle the smooth passage through Turkey all the way to the Gulf, all the way to China. And we've already seen those attempts to dismantle in the First World War. And the division of the Middle East countries that were basically set to have a block in the face of that railway system, yet the world energy was supposed to be reliant on oil, which could be problematic. I said in 2000, and by the way, 2014 was a key factor. Again, in the case around the 2014-15, I remember I was talking about the fact that the Gulf countries and even Qatar and Saudi Arabia have no problem building solar farms and just doing an oil embargo on the entire world. It's not unprecedented. Okay, 1973, we saw an oil embargo on the West. Iran was providing Israel with oil. 1979, they were no longer besties. So, um, and by the way, before 1973, it was impossible to get into Q1, okay, the academic papers were writing anything bad about Israel. 1973, 180 from that. Impossible to get to Q1 without writing anything bad about Israel. So, and I know, by the way, part of the people that were arranging the academic boycotting of Israel, it wasn't including them. They were getting a grant with the family, okay? And I wasn't seeing them too outspoken around the Me Too, which is the issue that causes and enables any genocide, and that's extortion cults. So, yeah. And the biggest war crime is rape because rape harms identity and causes mind control, which enables and desensitizes, which enables, um, within the context of ritual abuse and extortion cults, to create crimes against humanity. Um, so again, that probably has something to do with that. Either that, or it was the other way around, and Kurdistan was supposed to have like leverage to Europe and bypass Turkey. So whichever side Demmink was in that rare earth mineral consolidation, um, did he have an interest that Europe will not be energy sovereign? I don't know. Okay. Um, or alternatively, he didn't go along with, in any case, what he didn't go along with had quite almost equal power to him, which tells me that behind this extortion cult is some energy company and rare earth minerals company or conglomerate of companies. Falcon, if that's a family feud, I don't know. I don't know what people are invested in. Okay, so um, rare earth minerals also produce chips and so on and so forth, which are used malefically. And by the way, um, could have caused Jorris Demmink to commit crimes if there was experimenting such technologies on him and the technology is classified. Okay, or if that was the way to get the chip out. That is, um, yeah. Kurdish businessman, ASML. I don't know if SNL, but Kurdish businessman and political activist Hussein bin Bizin was detained in the Netherlands in insistence at the insistence of the Turkish authorities. 4 years later, Babizin was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Again, conspiracy to murder, kidnapping, and drug smuggling, which was increased to a life sentence a year later. A life sentence Okay, a little bit of a reality check to the Free Baby Zine movement, because immediately afterwards it started Free Baby Zine, Free Tachi. Um, Tachi is one smart person regarding his own self-representation, because he didn't find a jurisdiction, a law firm that represents people that are not sex offenders, that doesn't represent sex offenders. Okay, because he was trying to apply to the code of conduct of organized crime. And if he is a part of extortion cults, exposing that. Moving on. A life sentence without the possibility of parole is unprecedented. Okay. Oh, there we go to NATO. The Netherlands is an important NATO in 2013. Okay, it's not rooted as NATO. Although he was inspired by Jan Stolberg. Then I'm gonna be exactly like Jan Stolberg. Yeah, we're getting a pre-Valentine jab. The Netherlands is an important U.S. ally, and the thorough investigation of allegations is important to trust in the transatlantic relationship and NATO's cohesion and vitality. A continued failure, of course, The Hague is where they say if there are war crimes. That's a military alliance. A continued failure to thoroughly investigate these serious charges will inevitably lead to further calls for the transfer of the ICJ to another country, Singapore, where the rule of law exists somewhat and where elites aren't untouchable. Now, all the elites that are moving to Singapore, this is a setup. Real estate bubble pop. Prime Minister of Singapore has Uranus in Mula Nakshatra. It's around the galactic center. And the whole world goes boom. So, Taras Kuzio, non-resident fellow at the Center for Transatlantic Relations, School of Advanced International Relations, Johns Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins. Washington, 2011-12, sororities, fraternities. 2011-12, he was visiting senior fellow at the Slavic Research Center, Hokkaido University, Japan. No, you did not imagine the coherence of this sentence. Slavic Research Center in Japan. United States International's Outside View commentaries are written by outside contributors who specialize in a variety of important issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of United Press International. In the interest of creating an open forum, original submissions are invited. Okay. Dutch Untouchables, the struggle against child sex trafficking and belly fat. Drop the culture. They need to. Sometimes, it does cause excess weight, or the other way around. So, looking at this article and studying this article with you, at the juncture of Saturn Neptune as a part of the framework of predictions. Look at this vertex 22ing. That's the lot of fortune for Netherlands. There's a lot of assassination. No, it's a lot of fortune for Netherlands, and it has to do with assassinations in the Netherlands. So, Moon speaker opposing Chiron, issues of sovereignty, issues of military alliance. Libra speaker is definitely ICJ with Venus separating from the Nebalgadi, okay, the jurisdiction for like the whole world, and and in regarding to war crimes. Um, what was it? So we see here a power, this power struggle, one that Demmink was a part of, and one that opposes Demmink, creating a friction around the separatist movement in of Kurdistan from Turkey, right in the juncture where there is a thought to have a railway system from Europe all the way through the Middle East and all the way to China. That will, of course, is set to transport some sort of energy, oil, gas, rare earth minerals, and be a major route of transportation. One party probably thinking to block this, another party thinking to install this. Which of them was Demmink, I don't know, but it's evident that he was a key figure that tried to block something regarding that. Okay, either block or enable, but definitely those are quite equal powers there. Okay, the Demmink dossiers, the allegations began in the 90s, opened, closed, reopened, and so on and so forth, exposed the structure of the jurisdiction. Right now we have Epstein cases leading up to the jurisdiction and Dodge. Okay, so, but that was something that was ongoing for 1990s, we're 2026. Or even if I go to the Helsinki Committee, which is 2012, this is some good 30 years. This is Saturn. There's a Saturn return. Now, Rolodex is not one person. And then we see these frictions, and those frictions have to do with the ICJ. The ICJ is the verdict regarding war crimes. So it's probably regarding what crimes against humanity were planned before we can build the railway system, and they needed Kurdistan to either be sovereign or not. So probably they needed kind of like another genocide in Kurdistan. If Babysin was with the separatist movement, was Jorris Demmink blackmailed to dismantle it? And Babysin was trying, like, or was there an attempt to blackmail Jorris Demmink towards the separatist movement? And Turkey was the one that was popping up. Okay, so whatever was happening there, um, and because I began this question in saying, okay, let's say they try to expose Demmink. Why? What took them so long? Why does a case take so long to reveal? And usually with Neptune related things, it's because there are hidden factors that we need to understand. We need to understand the big picture. So what is exposed is the entire thing. Could we have exposed the Epstein list for 7th of October in the length and width that it is done today? I don't think so. Nobody would like, yeah, absolutely. Somebody would talk about the dark occults. Somebody would talk about the cloning. Somebody would talk about the MK Ultra. And then there is a 2030 city in digital prison building up in Gaza, which is 2030 agenda. The first wave was with the subprime. And I was thinking, okay, what about the Rolodex? Why would something be left hidden for so long? And it's usually so that we will understand how one connects to another. Because if we say, okay, let's say Demmink, okay, Demmink raped some children, okay, then let's say we put him in prison or even execute him. Replace the Demmink, and you have another free to go until they will expose that one. What and then we say, what is are they serially complaining about the Supreme Court judges? Are they trying to have no jurisdiction, uh, no justice party? Look at this 0 degree. Aries ascendant and 0 degree Capricorn. Of course, it's Mars hour. And this is why, with the Saturn Neptune, there's a bigger discussion. Now, when I first ended to the topic of ritual abuse, one of the things I heard, there was a video where somebody honored the expandable children, the children that didn't survive, and that they weren't having the voices even to speak. And so, talking about the names of the people that did that and so on, but then they said, well, worst case scenario, the children will remember the pedophilia and incest. And I was like, wait a second, what? What? So this is the same thing, like worst case scenario, they say, oh, Supreme Judge Court raped some children. It's terrible enough to shock people for them to stay shocked and not understand the railway system that doesn't exist, and therefore Europe is dreaming that it could protect itself without United States. I don't know what would be the implications of that railway system existing. Okay? How many genocides does it take to have a railway system? In the past, it took a World War I, and that was dismantled. And they took the Germans to build it. We can't say that that was something with the competence of the construction workers. United States wanted to remove Demmink and remove the ICJ from Netherlands. Probably United States wasn't so interested in that railway system before United States is also in New Egypt, which is according to which I am an American right now. I'm broadcasting from Negev region, Israel, or Palestine, whichever. Or alternatively, United States wanted that railway system, but on the way to New Egypt, there's a continent. There are 52 states. There can be more. Another thing that happened, when did we have the euro? Because those were the years. Um, no, I'm talking about the euro. We're not talking about. We're not talking about this one. We're talking about the euro. Okay, euro currency, because it was the same with that one. Foundation. 1999. By the way, it's almost Saturn returned to the Euro Foundation. In any case, United States wanted someone other than Demmink, but it was all the way to the ICJ. So very likely he was about to be promoted to the ICJ, which could have explained. Okay, let's say he is guilty in all that is associated to him as a thought experiment. Okay, and that would mean that he would need to have done a ritual to go into ICJ. Or to be in the committee that decides whether something is a war crime, a genocide, or not. People are thinking Israel, but I want you to think Kurdistan. I want you to think to all the Gulf countries. I want you to think all the way from Europe to China, from France and Portugal and UK and the Arctic to the other edge of China. Okay? That, not excluding Israel Palestine. How many cities need to be evacuated? Um, how many countries would want dividend that if they were colonized they would want less dividends? Who does such a railway system protect and who does it threaten? The country that is most reliant and susceptible to be struck by those non-rejuvenating energies is Germany. It's stuck in the middle between. It's very big and it's stuck in the middle, and it definitely has been. Um, it has had. Let's just say there were even before the two world wars, there were 300 years of war on on what we know now as Germany's ground by other countries, people fighting other people, kind of like what's happening in Syria. But this, speaking of Demmink for 3, 4 decades, is a telltale that he was a key figure that some oil company to do with United States and some rare earth minerals to do with Kurdistan did not want. Because Babysyn was working with Demmink. I think they were doing some sort of I think they also did inclusivity for people that are dealing with addiction or with drug addiction when it comes to housing. So think it was considered an